So we have with us Dr. Julia Assante, who lives in Provence at the moment, but she's lived in many countries. She's traveled widely, she speaks many languages, and she is a very established archaeologist, as well as many, many things. She's been a medium for many years. We won't say how many.
In the 1970s, we were called witches or fortune tellers in those
Which
days.
is what we remember those days. And
Yes.
she has written an amazing book called The Last Frontier, and it's one of my favorites. She's done a lot of work on after-death communication. I think in The Last Frontier, in the earlier version, she does a lot on the scientific evidence for survival, near-death experiences, after-death communication, and reincarnation. Plus, she's got some amazing stuff on scientific evidence for communication with the afterlife. She's been doing some great experiments. We won't be able to stop her. She's got so many stories, so much information, and we are very, very honored to have Julia. We did Julia's been on this program years ago, and there is a video of her earlier talk, if any of you want to go back to that. But Julia, the floor is yours.
Okay. If no one minds, I'm going to more or less read what I've come to about my ideas or what I have observed about incarnations. For 2 years, 2.5 years, I have a friend who I work with often. She does all of the changing things from speech into transcript and things of that sort. And she's also works for me to help me get books in other countries other than just America. And together, I went into trances. They're fairly light, sometimes deeper, twice a week with her. And she's in Spain, I'm in France. And what I learned about incarnations doing it that way was amazing. And so I'm presenting some of that kind of material for us tonight. 3 years of it. Also, really, the most fascinating are the oversouls, but I'm not going to talk about them. So I'm speaking today about it with a newer view of reincarnation. As we all agree, it's a fascinating topic and a thing that I seriously not just enjoy, but study. Like most people, my incarnation started in early childhood. And I'll be talking about that in a few minutes, but ideally a person, or I'll call it personality. A personality is someone who's not really formed. It just could be anyone. A personality should incarnate at least 3 times, and one time as a male and one time as a female, and at least one time as a parent. The incarnation should not be dramatically spaced, and they shouldn't occur outside of 100 years with each other. If you do 200 years, the landscape and the cultures are too difficult to for the reincarnated person to deal with. And that's true also for animals. They have to also live in friendly environments. Say if you're a person who wants to go incarnate in Turkey at 800 BC, and then again in China in 2050, it's really just too far away from each other. So it's a difficult cultural adjustment anyhow. There are, of course, not mandates, and you don't have to do anything. Really, there's no one telling you what to do. There's no one saying you can't do this, you can't do that. So these are just recommendations. You don't have to incarnate at all for that matter. And there are plenty of personalities who intend to incarnate and then back out by dying in the mother's womb. That's quite common, believe it or not. Often the frequency of incarnations depends on the personality's ultimate aims. For instance, if you aim to become an oversoul, you must know a great deal about the world in many different histories and forms. Although 3 to 9 incarnations is common. If you're trying to do something like be an oversoul after this life, you might have to get into the 100 zone. And that's exactly what's going on with me. And so I stopped doing this incarnation thing when I hit 85 incarnations. And truthfully, it was embarrassing. I couldn't imagine anyone believing this. But at this point, these limitations that people come up with about incarnation in particular and have to be questioned at some point. You know, there are two basic ways to look at incarnation or to work with it. One is to view it like a TV show, and the other one is a much more intense thing, and it's the reenactment of the incarnation. This is what I like. By the way, I'm a past life therapist too. I like it when people reincarnate, not when they just watch. And the emotion rises. They're more and more self-hypnotized. So even as a child, I took that route. You know, I battled or I screamed or whatever. It wasn't just a memory. It was an action. At the age of 4, for instance, I screamed at this poor Asian woman, probably a Jehovah's Witness going to the house. I was outside and I started screaming at her because she cut her hair. I started screaming and screaming and she ran. She ran away. And it was like took decades before I found out that short hair in the old days in China, on women, short hair was a sign of shame, usually a sign of shame for sexual life or prostitution. There was another, my mother and we had a maid at that time. They tried to hold me down so that they could do some medical process that I purportedly needed. And I went into a rage. I started kicking and screaming and all that. And at that point, I started to see images of like altars on pyramids and things of that sort. And a fat man come out, and I'm dressed. I've been kept in an area that no one knew about for 10 years. And I was taken up to this altar, and ribs were broken. And then he pulled the heart out and ate it. All right. As I died, I went up and realized that what these rituals are about are to correspond to and communicate with their gods. Anyway, years later, I found out that this was the process of breaking the ribs and pulling out the heart. And this was between an Incan prince and a Mayan community. I don't know what more to say about that, but later on it came up in past life therapy when I was a client, and it was really traumatic. But I was also very embarrassed about this. It became a common knowledge that this heart pulling stuff takes place or took place, and it seemed to me it was like too much. Oh, I know I was Cleopatra at some point or Alexander the Great. So I just kind of don't talk about it much. But it was a dramatic, dramatic incarnation, and it led me to believe in a God. No, as academics, we always read, so excuse me for this. Also that these a lot of these things are allied to a place such as Mexico, which is one of my favorite places to be. There's a guy when I was also a child named Addis, and he was from Rome, and he was a smith of about 120 BC. I'm really good at being able to get dates because I take a lot. I know a lot about how people dress. I really study that. And so Roman, I put him in 120 BC. Sometimes I can actually get it on the button, but I don't know here if that's so. And he was one of these very unusual guy, always in a state of ecstasy and always full of um, energy. And he especially loved children. He was always making little things for them, little tokens for them through his smith work. Um, and I found him, and he has helped me all of my life. When I've needed strength, he's been there. He's amazing. He's amazing. There were three incarnations in the Roman era in Rome that I've been able to identify. And they all had something that they prized. Like one was an architect during wars, and his love of stone, things of that sort, like Addis's love of metals was similar. And somehow they spoke to me in a way of a sort of the symbolic beauty of life and incarnation. We know reincarnation is real. We know clearly from past life therapists and from thousands of accounts from people who have experienced other lives. And so far, no one has been found that does not have an incarnation. So, and that I think that's pretty good. Since past life therapy is based on trauma, we usually have clients who suffer from brutality. And I've had people in this therapy who fell into sudden trance state to better relive their lives. This is going to be bad, the cat. Um, One even spoke in another language. It was spoken Aramaic. And she was just a regular gal from America. She didn't know any languages other than English. And this is the language that Jesus spoke, Aramaic. And there still are people in the high mountains in that area who speak it. Let's see. And this is this is something that's quite common, I think. Not quite common, but it happens, it occurs, of people going to a therapist, a past life therapist, and speaking in another language, the one they never heard of. And sometimes I caught it because have an obligation to know things about the ancient Near East. So, but I mean, spooky or just real. And for many years, by the way, I taught courses in Vienna. And we did reincarnations, and we got a lot of surprises, believe me. We had people that from the past, usually, they came to us and spoke to us, all of us. I had like 30 students, and he'd stand there or she'd stand there and speak to us. And there was one bull-sized guy, gorgeous looking guy, who showed up and saw this woman who's actually very pretty and got all crazy and started rushing at her, and he ran through my body, and I almost fell over. Like these students rushing over to me. He was actually the incarnation. The woman was, and she and he were not the same person, or didn't originate from the same person. They were different, but they were from the same community at the same time. Um, it's a very medieval life, and I quite like the medieval period, so I kind of force, listen or read or something like that sort as much as I can in Middle Ages. And I wondered why he was not really able to see us. He couldn't see me. And I wondered if he was dreaming, if this was happening in his dream, because it can. Incarnations can certainly happen in dreams. Oh, like everybody else, I believe in the standard ideas we inherited from Victorian period when England still owned India and became aware of reincarnation. The Indian version of incarnations is unmistakably political as it controls social status and therefore controls the majority of people in India. Very popular is the idea, of course, of karma and karmic debt and time. Karma came to the West in the Victorian period, and it's pure Hinduism. If you do bad things, your next incarnation will be hell. If you keep doing good things, you will soon reach the highest class, the Brahmin class, in which you enjoy respect and money. Obviously, the Christian parallels warn people of what they can expect after death as well. If you are righteous, you go to heaven. If you are if you're sinful, you go to hell. And not only is this absolutely false, it also assumes a cause and effect universe. And that is something that really is not so. It's logical to us, but it isn't. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about time. I did most of that work in the Last Frontier book, but it's still time within the frame of incarnations is also very interesting. Um, Yeah, incarnations, whether past or future, are not set by time. The Darwinian vision of evolution as a progression that goes from an early lower state to a higher state along a timeline is often wrongly applied to reincarnations. Darwin claimed that the ultimate result in the ultimate result that you could have was the English gentleman. That would be the highest level. This is Darwin's vision, right? Um, Many still presume that we become better and wiser over time. How many of you actually do assume that? Anybody have any idea? Um, if that were so, many people think it is, and including past life therapists. Um, if that were so, imagine you would think that after 100,000 years, we should by now have a spectacular population and a world of wonderful, caring humans. Now, is that true? Is it getting better by time? No. A third problematic belief assumes that people in the afterlife leave it to return to physical life in their new incarnation. This is where everybody's probably going to fight me. Such a belief denies the precious uniqueness of all personalities, including animals and insects. Each living thing remains alive in the vast afterlife dimensions for all eternity. Afterlife personalities do not return to physical lives. Deciding what incarnation is needed often calls for other related incarnations to gather together telepathically and choose a life that comes the closest to satisfying a person's fulfillment needs. So, Near, I'm going to start talking to you about splits rather than incarnations. They are the major thing about incarnations, but it's a slightly different take. So after spending years for understanding the processes of incarnation, I had to admit that new incarnations were mixtures of many personalities, alive or not, that are in fact a collection of splits. In order to understand what I mean by that, I'll give you an example. Back in the old days, in 1970s, I was asked to work with an outdoor festival that took place on a little island outside of Manhattan. And it was celebrating spirituality and psychic things and of that sort, which is a breakthrough. So I was one of the psychics employed. Actually, I ended up doing like 22 readings, and then one day I was exhausted. But anyhow, um, I stood outside and I wore a badge with my name, Julia Assante, and in facing me in this line of people waiting for a reading was a very beautiful woman, and she stood looking at my badge. She said, she showed me hers, and it read Denise Assunta, and both names are pretty unusual in the States. And Denise told me that Assunta was wrong. Her real name was Denise Asante. Not only did she carry the same last name, we noticed that we both looked alike. We looked like sisters. Um, we both worked intuitively. We both lived in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and we were both born on May, almost exactly a year from each other. Shortly after, Denise came to me for a reading. She only wanted information about her incarnations. And you know what? Believe it or not, no one has done that before, and no one has done that since then with me. And of course, I agreed. So I put myself in a trance and I sat there dead silence in the chair for at least 10 minutes. Finally, I opened my eyes and told her the truth. I just told her the truth. And I said, I can't do a reading for you. She said, why? Why? I replied, because all your incarnations are the same as my own. When Denise and I experienced together what we experienced together, it was tremendous. We witnessed a constant group of other incarnations which involved us both. Two things occurred. First, the two of us often became one rather than two. The second one was that the two of us came individually and shared our incarnations. We were often married to each other, or we also took turns of one of us as the mother and the other as the child or the father. And what this tells me is that although we were originally the same person, since then we split into different directions, like a tree that sends its roots out underground to grow more trees. Denise and I began to lose touch when I entered graduate school, and I became absolutely passionately involved with ancient Mesopotamia. And meanwhile, I had a life-changing experience during my daily meditation. Suddenly, I was out of my body, and I felt as though I was flying like a comet. Really, I could feel my face shaking, pulled away. How do you feel that if you're out of your body? But that's what was happening. It was amazing. I was a little afraid too. Anyway, excuse me. I landed in a little office room and saw a man sitting there at his desk, and he looks at me and he says, "So you finally figured it out, huh?" Like I was some kind of an idiot, and I was some kind of an idiot in his terms. His name was and still is Bernard, and he is one of my future incarnations of about 200 years from now. This is another argument for the no time situation. And not also a sequential time, not a before and after phenomenon. There was nothing spectacular about this guy either. He looked very much like people today, almost dressing-wise too. His job was receiving messages from other dimensions, primarily the afterlife ones. He then sends them to the people intended, much like a postman. Unlike a postman, he had powerful psychic abilities, which were necessary for regularly achieving communication with other universes. Sitting by his leg was a foot-high black machine with tubes that opened pathways to other worlds. And I never found out how that worked. More and more, people are realizing that there's a big effect on electronics or even something like a toy duck that's battery ridden. And more and more you're seeing tests showing things like chickens who want their fake chicken mommy closer to them. And it starts to happen because they want that. And so this mixture of electronics or machinery or whatever in the future will change, and it will have a lot to do with these abilities. I still have with Bernard, by the way, and he told me that there was another incarnation that we both shared, and her name is Joanna. Both Bernard and Joanna, who is remarkably brilliant, by the way, helped me understand incarnations and interims. And in turn, I helped Joanna with her love life, which was like zero practically. And Joanna was a product of many splits, starting with one when she lived with my mother. Now, my mother was also a split, not the mother exactly the way I knew her, but in another way. Joanna herself was very sick with diabetes and had lived at home all the time and was permanently attached to a wheelchair. I mean, she just couldn't move. She was also obese. Here's the mirroring here. I have pre-diabetes, and although I'm overweight, I'm certainly not obese. And from this depressing scene for Joanna and her split, um, she split again and became a singer with a genius brain that could hold much more than only one dimension. And that's where we're going, multidimensional minds. And oddly enough, electronics are helping. It's a parallel. You know, all this singing, my mother she also wrote music. So there's this thing with music that is threaded through to me, to Joanna, and our mothers. Each person creates splits according to their tendencies and needs, and some splits are remarkably intense and others not. Each of us splits also feels that we are personally the center of any given incarnation or split of itself. And I think that's the way it should be. There might be some mothers running around who really live for their children, but I think even then, we are at the center of all that is. Years after these unforgettable journeys to future incarnations, I received a phone call from Denise. It really was like 10 years that we hadn't been in touch. And she sounded restless and she was speaking quickly. She told me that she had just met a man who was an incarnation of herself in the future. And his name is Bernard. I mean, I almost fell off the chair. Both of these people, Bernard and Joanna, are alive now. Regardless of what is said or written, identified as a number, this is the truth. We are always in now. We are always in the center. At the same time, they are dead and they are not yet born, young or old, because time in our universe does not really exist. The most you can say is that we can construct time, at least for our planet, for certain reasons. And more importantly, we should remember that an incarnation can emerge in the past as easily as emerging in the now or the future. Even so, the agreed meaning of time changes. When you are young, 3 months seems to be a long, long time, whereas if you're aged, it would be perceived as very short. Certain insects are born and die within a single day. They must feel it as an eternity. And we can't know. Perhaps a few of us here have had life reviews in which we see our entire lives in just one flash. That reminds me also of if anybody listening here has ever had a life review. You see it all, you feel it all, you know it all, and it is maximum in 1 second. It's all this amount of time converging to one point. And I think the idea, which we call it non-locality, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with that word, non-locality is getting kind of a lot of stars, A plus. And we need really, really much more information about it. But it's the thinking of many of us who work in these areas. I wrote a lot about non-locality and timelessness and space without space and all of that in The Last Frontier, the book. So you might think that the world is not big enough to keep allowing a constant flow of blooming, living splits. Space, however, doesn't exist, right? I mean, think of it as you dream. And you're dreaming, you're in this very spacious area, say on the ocean or something of that sort. There's no real ocean. There's no real big spatial ocean. These are mental constructions, and they're also enculturated. Not everybody sees the same way. In fact, there have been studies made with people who never heard of a chicken, for instance, and there's a video with a chicken in it, and they don't see it. They can't build the construction because they don't know what it is. All right. And if you dream with yourself and you dreamed and you know the female figure or the male figure is you know it is, but it doesn't look like you run into a split. And it happens all the time. We dream of ourselves being in something, but it's not the same self we know that we see in the mirror. And splits are and can be helpful. For instance, if you long to paint but never have the time, a part of you will split in the need if the need is strong enough. In another dimension, you will be a painter. That's all. I have been able to uncover about 13 personal splits on my end. And one of them was to be a maker of music for films. I've always been a fairly good musician. I mean, I've done piano concerts, and I also made my own Japanese music for playing the mandolin. Um, and of course, it wasn't enough for me. And I got some solace when I realized that there was a person stemming from me called Julia Assante, who creates music for films in another dimension. A year ago, for a certain reason, I was obligated for a few months to go to Marseille airport and back. Each round trip took 2 hours. While driving, I began to hear music in my head. It was very unusual music, and that might have been written by someone in the far future, but not now. It was sort of eerie and strangely beautiful. And more than just writing it, I kept changing it while I drove. I could even see the music written out above my head. After a while, I could no longer stand it. It was making me crazy. Unbelievable. It couldn't stop and it wouldn't stop, but it did slow me down when they started going into a kind of neo-Baroque music. And then I got over it. Um, and I really wish I could have made recordings, but of course I couldn't. It's because these things were stunning, and I don't even know what kind of instruments they were using. Sad, but all out of this world. Other splits have something to do with taking over one of my problems. A major one was that many people, like my mother and my older sister, have been jealous of me. I have a big problem with jealousy. And it's been a bother to me since I was born. I've seen that one of my splits has taken the burden away from me to carry it herself. It was a female split. Um, since then, my life has become easier, truthfully. We rarely notice that we take on a burden, and sometimes it can save lives. And once, while I was with friends in a restaurant in New York, I started feeling this heart attack come on. I just really was feeling bad and couldn't breathe, and tremendous pain in the chest. And my friends wanted to get me an ambulance, but I knew it wasn't mine. I could tell the difference. So I said, no, no, I'll live with it. And it eventually stopped. And the next morning, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who screamed at me, I almost died yesterday and you didn't call. I said, well, you would have been dead if I hadn't done what I did. And he couldn't believe it. But that's, it happens. It happens. We take on say, the cold of one of your children without realizing it, things of that sort. So there's a lot of yes and no and good and bad stuff that goes on with incarnation, but that can be also very useful. If you uncover some of your splits, you might feel freer. You might find splits that take on your exhausting workload so that you can slow down and enjoy life. If you wanted to write a book, for example, but never had the time, you might the splits might help you to calm down, because somewhere in a universe somewhere, or in this universe somewhere, is a split that has already written that book. Life is so much easier when you realize that your wishes are heard and will manifest what you had hoped to do. Like everybody else, I believed in the standard ideas we inherited from the Victorian period, when England still owned India and became aware of reincarnation. The Indian version is unmistakably political. Did I say or talk about this before?
Julia, I think now might be a good time if you start taking some questions, if you're up
Oh,
for it, because I think mo many of us, like me, my mind is going byong, like this is fascinating stuff, but we maybe just need to recalibrate a little bit and answer a few. Can you define what you mean by a
fine, but I
split?
want to give you one more thing.
Okay.
All right. Do you know about the material the research that's been going on at University of Virginia?
Yes.
All right. So do you know about these people, these children?
I think most of us would know
Yeah.
that we
Yeah, but do you know why it happens
why why
and how
why
it happened?
why they
The one
remember.
thing that they missed is that there's no incarnation going in there.
Right.
No
Okay.
incarnation going on with these kids. What is happening is that with shock deaths,
Yeah, they're
what
all
happens,
traumatic
they go into
deaths.
panic and they're trying to find some way to get back because they're going to deny being dead. They don't
Right.
pass consciously into the afterlife. They're on the brim, but they won't go past that. And I mean, it's amazing to think that they find someone. I never had people. I've been sitting in a chair as a medium, listening through somebody else how this person committed suicide. And my first question is, does he know anyone? And I got Ohio for some reason. In Ohio, he wants to have children. And I said, yes. I said, because this guy's telling me he's going to Ohio. Now, if this guy, he was a university professor too. And if this guy actually does do that, then he can reincarnate. But he may reincarnate as a girl, which is the worst possible thing that can happen, as usual. Yet it happens all the time. I think this is all the reason why there's a baby boom after a war. Do you know how many people in that war did not know they had died? We have these transcripts of amazing, amazing psychics who, for no money in those years, could communicate with people who were in World War II. Even they communicated with people in the future before that person died. And we don't have this kind of great mediumship stuff anymore. But anyway, it causes another population, and many parts of it have sexual confusion. When these soldiers die, they don't know they died, or they denied it, or whatever, and they come back, and they come back biologically female. That is a setting for new ideas about gender and sexuality. Why? One of the reasons why homosexuality was more common. At the same time, the feminists, it was the reason why I wanted to be born when I could do stuff about feminism, really do work with it. Um, I think we all realize that now we have so much acceptance, at least in America, of different sorts of genders. And the truth is, there are neuter genders as well, which we haven't established. And most of us are in neuter gender mode. We're not male, we're not female, we're neuter. Many of us, I know a ton of women who have beards. You would never know it. And we've got to rethink how much biology plays into this and how much of it is also a consciousness process, and enjoy it, bring it into our cultures, break down some of this rigidity of
Ju-
sexes.
Julia, you've given us so much. I think there are so many questions, so many different threads that we people might need to clarify. Um,
Okay,
so how
just
about we
telling you that was we were on page 6. It said it ends up at 32. So if you ever want me to just
we'll
send
have
it.
to we'll have to come back again. We'll have to look at that. But we've just got so much. I think people just need to assimilate this a little bit.
Oh, I shouldn't do that to people.
My head is spinning. I've got like a million questions, and I think perhaps if we have some
Well, give
questions,
me a
it might
million.
clarify. Dan, I can rely on Dan Drayson to give you a million questions. Let's
Yeah.
start with Dan.
Oh,
Okay.
excuse me, and I apologize for joining late. I'm working on a cold right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much, Julia. I one of my most favorite memories is of a workshop that you gave in, I believe it was Palo Alto some years ago that I attended. And
No kidding.
yes,
My
and
sister lives in Palo Alto.
uh,
Yeah,
well,
so I was staying with her a lot. I should have stayed in California. I was
where are you based now?
Provence.
Ah, wonderful.
Yeah,
Bon.
come visit.
Right. Anyway, I'm just in what I've heard of your presentation today, not the whole thing. Um, I've made some notes, and I think for me, I don't know if you're familiar with my book that just came out last year, called "A New Science of the Afterlife," and its longest chapter is about language.
Oh, wow.
And I think much of what you've been saying today really points to the limitations of our language and the fact that our very language that structures our thinking and our perceptions and so on is geared to the standard version of things,
Yeah,
our own culture, our own politics, our own sense of reality.
right.
And so I think that one of the gifts that you're giving is to question how our language determines our concepts and our perceptions and so on. And that can drive you crazy. It can be a can of worms on the one hand. On the other hand, it opens things up to new avenues of perception and understanding of them. One thing I've noticed myself, and this has just started to happen recently, and maybe it's just because I'm getting old, but
Oh,
I'll be walking on a street near a park, say near where I live, and I'll be looking out at a vista of a lawn, and suddenly it's as if some flowers on that lawn will appear right in front of my eyes. In one instance, I was walking around the corner to where there's a street with cars parked, and a minivan seemed to materialize before my eyes, parked in a particular spot. It happened in a fraction of a second, but it was long enough for me to see that transition.
well,
I had to ask, well, am I watching the process of my awareness, creating what's actually there, creating the proper image of it. Have I shifted a timeline, or what? Or am I going crazy? That's another option.
That's the thing you shouldn't do. That's the only one.
Well, I'm
I
holding that
think
one
there's
light.
no way of really taming something like that. It comes as it will. But I think there will be in the future a lot more understanding of timelessness and time, and really gigantic changes in all of this. And the variations of it, that's the problem with most of our interpretations. We don't also offer the variations and the possibilities.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
I'm just trying to think if I had another question in terms of your own work. Um, I'm fascinated with what you say about the Hindu interpretations having a political foundation.
Oh, yeah.
I had never considered that.
Hmm. Definitely. This is social control,
Hmm. And to what extent do other flavors of social control on
Yeah.
our planet and in our history determine our sense of reality?
Yeah.
I have to
All
admit,
kinds of ways to capture power,
the Middle Ages are a sort of a minor fascination of mine as well, and so many of the norms of our current reality even may have originated back then. Middle Ages, in the early Renaissance, and so on. That's what's reality to us. And what an adventure, is all I can say.
Yeah. And the Middle Ages has been badly treated by historians.
I agree.
I think there was, I'm not exactly what, a Christian, and you know what I mean. I, I understand it. I read constantly about it. Um, but for the most part, and we don't go along with the flow in these situations. We don't allow new ideas to come in. We keep going forward and then going back 3 steps, going forward 2 steps, going back 4 steps. And I don't really know, a political situation is determined in so many ways. Money issues or power issues, or wherever you were born, what color your skin is. And that could be put to great positive use. Hmm. Yeah, language is tricky. Language really, as praised as it is, it also causes us to forces us into a more rigid cultural system. If we thought more from within and even made grunts, it might be possible that we would have more understanding than not.
I'm often intrigued watching, say, some people in a cafe conversing, and they happen to be bilingual, and they'll shift from one language to another because
That's my life.
one language can express whatever it is they're
Yeah.
wanting, and the other
Yeah,
can't.
that's my life. I hate it.
Do it as well. And
I love the English and the German, and the beginning of it is I did study ancient English, the first English that ever appeared in England. And the base of it is, of course, a certain kind of German. And it's amazing how close these languages are. If you really look at it, it's amazing, especially with verbs.
mm,
Uh, that I adore.
mm,
I adore that kind of really old stuff that's moved around and has one language that's come through so many different countries. In
mm.
Poland, even many people are German speakers. I have a whole community of Poles who like me.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Over there.
Thank you for your questions, Dan. We've got Charity waiting with a question. Charity, you mute.
Hi, thank you. Thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
Sure. Hmm.
Oh, good. Thanks, Julia. That's so interesting. As you were talking about languages there, I started to recall those kind of people who suddenly speak in another accent.
Yeah, it's a
And
sonoglossy or something like that. Yeah. Hmm.
is that right? And I was wondering if you had any insights or anything to share about that experience.
Oh, I think it's quite clear what it is. I think these are these eruptions of an incarnation coming through. Instead of just looking at it, they're reenacting. Um, and it's well known among us people who do past life therapy. It doesn't happen, it only happens, you know, one time in a year or three times, 3 years, 50 years, and then it'll occur. It's fascinating. And some of them are really hard to track. You don't know for sure what language that is. One of them uh, was a Chinese spiritual and like a hymn, but it was the wrong kind of Chinese, so it was all hidden. And you were not allowed to speak it. Otherwise, you would lose your head. And it came out with this little surfer boy guy. A surfer, he's a California surfer guy. Yeah, started speaking this really difficult language. It's amazing. It's interaction at its highest. Right?
That's phenomenal. Well, of course, you can have ancient languages coming through. I was just sort of thinking more recently about a lass from Brisbane. She's of what appears to be Oriental descent, and but speaking like I am normally, and then suddenly wakes up one morning and starts speaking in an Irish accent and having to go to a job interview and thinking, what is going on here?
That's sabotage.
And yes, and she, I mean, it's a beautiful sing-songy kind of accent to
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
um, but it's quite unsettling when she can't recall having, any surgeries, any head injury, anything like that to sort of bring this around to suddenly wake up and ta-da, there you are, you're speaking,
Yeah,
Irish.
some of them, I think there was one that had something like eight of them, and none of which she's ever seen, you know. It's very interesting. It's
Thank you,
even
Charlie.
more
It's
interesting if you have a recording and find out what the words are.
fascinating, fascinating. Well, this lady would happen to be on the radio because it was only fairly recent that it happened to her, and they were talking about these sorts of things. And so, yes, I missed getting online to speak with her, but I had left the message that potentially she could look at,
Mhm.
having regressions and see if there's any connection, and maybe by touching on that regression, she could actually solve it, come back to her own accent. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, yeah,
Hmm.
good plan.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charity.
Hmm.
Now,
Thank you.
what I'm concerned about, Julia, some people have to leave on the hour, but I really would like to get you to talk a little bit about what you flagged earlier about being able to prove the afterlife with a machine.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll tell you one thing. The idea came from a dead guy, one
Right?
of my greatest loves. Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you how it started. Do you want me to
Please
do that
do.
now?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Um, hmm, this is kind of a secret. There is some being in Austria a lot. There's a lot of stuff that comes to us from Russia. And there are machines that are invaluable and do amazing things. This is one little machine, is that it tests the strength of your auras, for instance, something like that. It can pick up all kinds of things in your body. There are other kinds that can actually totally get rid of your cancer. And this little machine, it's not so little, but it only costs like 16,000. I know the inventor, and I can't stand him. He's really But anyhow, with this machine, what's his name? Oh, never mind. And you can actually track how close you are to someone in the afterlife. You call them in, First of all, if you're doing the chakra thing, the closer you get and the more open the chakra, the louder this device is going to go. And also it'll send alarms like red light, red light, red light. So you have two ways of being able to monitor what's going on. So if you're pointed here and it screams, then you're very strong here in this area energetically. And it also signifies that the device is close. Using the same principle, you can just put your hand with the device up in the air when you're ready. You can scan it, and there's nothing, because there is nothing. You're going to do it again when you call someone, and bam, comes in. And not only does it come in, it also begins to let me know or another medium know what's going on, who they are. So you end up with a person here with the arm up with a device, and you can start to feel it coming from a different direction or whatever. And it gets louder and louder and louder. And that means when it's really loud, that this is how far away you are from the energy of a dead person. And we had all different kinds in the trials, all different kinds of things that we did. It was amazing. We even got this voice phenomenon came in the air. I was just overwhelmed. I couldn't believe how easy it was. What we need is to get chairs and things that can monitor the mediums and how they're feeling. If they get, for instance, a kind of a push when that person usually comes in, there's going to be often waves and things of that sort. And I mentioned that to you earlier, and I'd like to get those investigated. I think you can track them.
Is this what was part of the Percy project?
It is the Percy
The
project.
Percy project. Now, I was reading about it online. You had some wonderful stuff online, and it's not online just at the moment. I'm hoping it's going to come back about the Percy project. You had some videos there of them using this little machine.
But Dean Radin wanted to do it with me.
Right.
Right? That'd be great. I didn't ask him. He told me. And we didn't have the money.
Okay. Well, that's and how much money are we looking at for
16,000.
16,000 for
a crummy little, yeah.
For a crummy little handheld device.
No, it's actually pretty heavy, but yeah.
Pretty heavy. Well,
this guy worked in the Kremlin for most of his life, and he they pushed him to find a machine that could help the astronauts who were coming back ill after being in the air for a year or so. So he did it. And this machine is quite amazing, and it's of course illegal to use. You know how medicine keeps its own closet.
Okay. Would it be okay if I put a link to the archived version of that for people to have a look at, because it's fascinating stuff?
Sure.
I'll just put it in the chat window. It's called the Percy Project. I'm just going to put it here, and everyone in the meeting. The web page, that section of the web page is down at the moment because I think you're working on it. Is that right? You're doing a new
version. We're changing the whole thing, right?
But you can still get it through the Internet Archive. Any website that's gone down, if you go to the Wayback Machine as a researcher, it's really valuable. Type in the URL and you can get archived versions, earlier versions of that site. So that's a good tip for anyone doing research.
How do you know all of this?
Because I'm a researcher too.
Yeah, but the mechanics side of it.
The mechanics, it's the Wayback Machine is invaluable because you can get earlier versions of a particular newspaper site, things that people have taken down because of defamation. It's all up
Great.
there. It's all up there. The
Yeah.
Wayback Machine. And as long as you know the URL, if the site, a lot of times, really good sites with great information go down, the person has died or whatever, but the material is still all up there if you know where to look. So
Mhm.
that's really valuable. But yeah, I was fascinated watching the videos on the Percy project. I thought, wow, this is like really great stuff. Now,
Yeah, and you see there's this one that didn't want to go into the main room, the seminar room, and we moved it, and he showed up at 1 o'clock in the morning, but he was louder than all the others, and he was Peter Percy, and that's why he's the one who gave me the idea to do this, and he was the first person. He's dead, right? He's been
right.
dead for a long, long time. I have great dead folk. And one story that I had that had to do with him was pretty amazing. I was going to tell you tonight, but we used a lot of time before.
Okay, look. So look, can we just go back to one thing you said, which I'm waiting for other questions. If people have got questions about the myriad of things that Julia has said, that's left my mind just spinning. Let's go back to the children who remember past lives, and invariably they involve dying in some kind of trauma, as you say. So, what is actually happening here? Are you saying that they're actually picking up the spirit somebody else's past life, not their own?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, he has 3-year-olds smoking cigars,
Yeah, where the
you
work on
know.
children's past lives is very, very convincing. So, what is happening here?
These are not past lives. That's the thing.
What are they?
These kids are not dead. They
Right,
never died because
right.
they were in denial.
They never
They
crossed
wanted to
over
get back.
completely.
I've seen this happen with so many mothers and who die from cancer and things of that sort. And they won't accept the fact that they've died. They need to help their children. And they'll try the same thing. But you're not really oriented if you're doing something like that, because a mother, by the time she incarnates, or you call it that, she comes in, she's going to be 3 years old, where her kids are probably in college. She can't
Right,
help them.
right.
So the
So,
idea is you have to help them understand. When I was in Palo Alto, with your friend, when I was in Palo Alto, I was standing on the street at night, and this ghost of a cop came running past me, and he started crying and crying. He had just been shot. He was dead. He had no family anymore. He wanted to go back to his wife. He wanted to go back to his children. He didn't know what to do. And he's a good candidate in this crazy state to try something like that, to come through some woman who is fertile. And it happens in seconds, by the way. You
so
search for it
he
in
would
seconds.
just immediately reincarnate because of that desire to stay around.
Yeah, but it's not a reincarnation, because it has nothing to do with changes or interims, nothing. It's just exactly the same person. And there's these people, little young guys who died, probably shot or whatever, and then you get the burst marks showing the shot places
Yeah,
where the bullet was. A young guy who was in love with a prostitute, and when he came back, he had two things in mind. He wanted to kill the person who killed him, and he wanted to get old enough to be with a prostitute again. And that
right,
happened. But he didn't kill anyone. It's the same person, it's just a different body.
right.
And
So
that we don't understand this kind of stuff because we don't think in these terms. We have to look around a little bit more.
okay. So basically, now you talk about splits. What we had a fellow coming on to talk about this few years ago, who said he was aware of 8 different versions of himself. one of them had
Love the
already
guy.
died. One of them had already died. One of them, he and his wife had divorced. One of them had uh, an amazing guy, and he was just talking about the fact it's kind of going back to years ago. They used to talk about parallel lives, which I
Yeah,
kind of think is the same thing you're talking about splits. That not quite.
not quite.
So, how do you define a split, and how can you create a split? Let's say you said that
You know, I don't, I think it would be very difficult to do that consciously.
Mm.
Consciously, it won't have the same power. It's desire. It's desire
So let,
to
let,
to to emerge into a world of things and a world of objects and not just a world of simple consciousness.
okay, so
And
let's say it's because there is no time. I we have this whole thing of timelessness. So I'm just thinking, let's say you've got somebody who is a childless academic, say, who says, I really would, and has an unconscious desire to have 10 children, to experience that. Would that have been set up before this incarnation so that they have a split? How does it work? It's
the question and the answer come at the same time. They're related to each other. It's not time that will do it. Um, it's a very good question, by the way. And I think I would have explained that later on.
okay.
Yeah, but it's so simple. You know, one of the things that ever got me into thinking in this way was a guy who lived around the block from me in New York, and he started talking to me about this weird thing that happened to him as a kid. And that weird thing that happened as he was a kid, he was with his father. The two of them were driving down a road. There was a guy on the side of the road, and he tipped his hat, hello, and they went further, and that was that. And then as he went further, there was themselves going along a road. The guy tips his hat and they end up in a car crash. And so that's the split. And he was fearful of that all of his life until he came and worked with me and we worked it out.
Interesting.
So yeah, yeah. The more pressure you put on them, the more likely it won't happen. The things that I was talking about in terms of people splitting and things of that sort have to do with things that we don't know a lot about, like intensities and urges we don't have names for. I mean, even the idea of and never mind. I don't need to. I'm
Okay.
just hoping that you get the idea of it, general idea.
Okay.
It's not complicated, by the way.
Okay. Well, my head
No, it
is
isn't. It's just
my
not
head
well
is
known.
spinning on timelines. I was watching Matthias
And
de
space
Stef
lines.
well, I was watching Matthias de Stefano. I don't know if you've seen any of his work, but
Yeah,
he's talking about the world being on the wrong timeline, that somehow it got shifted off its ideal timeline. And that's really another area of fascinating to me. Look,
yeah.
Dave Wright's got a question. Let's hear from Dave.
Okay.
A question
Yes,
or a comment, whatever. Come on, Dave.
it's a question.
Okay.
We have
Good.
a group that when he mentioned she has 30 groups, or we have a dream group. And I'm in that group. We meet once a month. And I'm a retired dentist. And I keep having these dreams that I'm in different offices. Like I'll be in my old office, but instead of on the top where it was, it's on the bottom. Or I'll have employees all mixed up that have been with me in one office, but I had a couple offices, but now they're in a new office with me. So everything's changed, and this happens like every night, it seems.
Yeah.
Could there be splits that you've been talking about?
Oh, sure. Definitely. Different versions of you. Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, there may not be any space, but the space is endless at the same
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
You can't fill it up. You couldn't fill up a dream either.
I've also had dreams that I've been married to different people.
Yeah. Or male or female. Yeah. All that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Mhm.
A dream state tells us a lot. Tells us a lot.
Mhm.
And it's probably in some ways more realistic than the lives we go through. These
Okay.
heavy trudging,
Mhm. I kind of thought that it was what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay,
I
thanks
see
a
the
lot.
same man every time, and every time I see him, he's completely different, but I know who it is.
Mhm.
Um,
Thanks.
I mean, Jürgen Zever, as you may know, is an astral traveler, and he's written some fabulous stuff. He's doing conscious out of body traveling for 40 years,
Yeah.
and he
I,
draws
I
what he
kind of know
sees.
him.
You know, yeah. Well, I thought you might know
We
Jürgen.
sometimes write each other.
Yeah,
He is
he
great.
he
He's great.
he talks about having discovered when he's out of body um, artwork that he's been doing and exhibitions he's been running in other dimensions. And he says as soon as he goes up close to it, he remembers every stroke, but it's something
Hmm.
he's not consciously aware of in this life. So, are we living parallel lives on different dimensions? Are we sort of doing things like a lot of my friends who do have out of body experiences say that they see me doing different things in different levels. Is that the same, that we're all doing different things in different places?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah. If you put it all together, like this guy, this Peter
Yeah,
Perp. Yeah.
the Percy
Um,
Project.
yeah. And we talked about this. His communication is fantastic now. And he really speaks beautifully. And he's just a little flick of light, nothing more. Um, we talked about a lot of things, and I finally asked him about, what would we have been like if we had gotten married? Because he asked me to marry him, and I said no, which I always thought was the worst thing I ever did in my life, but truthfully, it's a good thing. And so he said, well, there are at least 4 different versions of our marriage in different consciousness streams, let's put it that way. And he gave me how 2 of them worked. He said he was a scientist, serious, Harvard University. And he said that there's one case, because I was into the spirituality stuff and whatever, we're talking 1970, blah, blah. And he hated this kind of stuff. He's a scientist. So that he knew he would have been a very angry man living with me and having me as his wife. The other one was we became the ideal family. And we cared and cared and cared for our children, really worked hard for family life and sacrificed all of our abilities. So for him and for me, we made the right decision to not marry.
It's interesting. I think this is something that I find the practical use of this is that if you're in your life and you're having regrets for what you haven't done, like, oh gosh, I'm just a housewife. I've never written the book that I've written. If you actually realize you probably have, or you probably are living that other life, so that you can just sort of relax and sort of say,
You
okay,
can speak to it. You
I
can
am
speak to
doing,
it.
yeah, and you can speak to it, can you?
Yeah.
This is what Dick Sutphen used to talk about. He used the term parallel lives, that you could actually connect with your parallel lives. And
Yeah, but that doesn't
again,
fit with what I'm talking about in terms of incarnating.
no, right.
Not quite.
So
Mhm.
how can you speak to it? Tell me about that. How can you communicate with the other parts of yourself?
Well, you close your eyes You focus towards them and you say, I need you to answer some questions. And you wait. And then you start getting it. It's just that simple.
Right. Interesting stuff. Interesting
Yeah.
possibilities. Instead of
Mhm.
so often what we think of as our spirit guides may well be other parts of ourselves.
Oh, yeah. I usually get awakened in the middle of the night, say, okay, you're on duty. You know, she's completely burned and she's really in pain. It's like, what? Yeah, I mean, there are armies of us, believe me. And probably we don't pay attention. If we don't pay attention, we probably don't get too much more attention. But
Okay.
they're there, yeah.
So how can we use this knowledge? Like at the present time, I'm just thinking about America and so much of the world. People are in despair. People are feeling that we're going backwards. We're losing
We are.
everything that we've gained.
Lose
And
democracy.
we're
Quite a big
losing
thing.
democracy. We're
Yeah.
losing uh, tolerance. We're losing. There
Mhm.
seems to be this whole movement of towards intolerance, towards lack of diversity. We see all of the gains of feminism being downtrodden all over the world. So
Right.
how can we use our knowledge to actually reduce the angst of this? I mean, so many people, myself included, get these waves of despair about what is happening.
Yeah,
And
it's turning rightist everywhere.
so what? How can we help people or influence people? People are looking for some kind of way of coping with this.
I think that the too many countries, their first cultural need is greed
Yeah,
and power with through money. And I think that that has grown and grown and grown. The independence of people, they're no longer slaves or they're no longer working in the fields for a king. All that's changed. Anyone now can become a millionaire if they do the right things. So
yeah.
it's all about greed. Instagram is about greed. I mean, it's all over the place. How to get rid of it, how to change it. There's no unity to change. There would have been, say, Christians could do it. A unity of Christians or whatever, or Jews or whatever, could possibly do it. But as long as we are advertising greed and me, and not you, me, it's called alterity in uh, social sciences. To break down this alterity, to break down the you, me idea, everything's fenced now. For instance, all the land around here is fenced. And everybody needs something for themselves. And we have put greed first. We
So
have
what
put
do we
wealth.
do about it? Well, those of us who are in a position to influence others or to,
And I think you have to be building something that's important to different cultures, but something that can unite different cultures, different societies. And I don't know what that might be off the top of my head. But since the whole idea of God or of all that is, which is what I would call it, is not doing anything anymore.
well, this seems to me that the real issue of the times. How can we get people back to that whole idea that we are one, of oneness with the land, oneness with the earth?
They don't
Um,
even want it.
this is it. We've got sort of
They don't, because oneness makes you puts you in a situation in which you have to share. They
exactly.
don't want it. Yeah,
So what? Just hold that thought for a minute. Dan, you had a question. You
it
had,
will go away. We always have these things. Liberalism, right?
yeah. Look,
And yeah, up and down,
those of
up and
us who
down.
have studied history know that everything comes in cycles.
Yeah, exactly.
Ozymandias. Look at me. What's the Shelley's poem? Um, look on me, you mighty, and see how mighty I am. And now he's just the feet in the sand, that sort of thing. That empires rise and fall. We know that, but it's a bit distressing to see all of the gains that we've had over the last 40, 50 years suddenly in jeopardy. And
It's
yeah,
horrifying.
it is. It is. And what do we do? We can't just sort of like um, opt out and sort of say, oh well, there's a different timeline. We've we've got caught in the wrong timeline. Just hold that thought. Dan, you had a question. You said something you wanted to throw up.
I wish I could answer right away.
I know. It's just something that
Maybe
we're all
sometimes
thinking
you and I
about.
will do, seriously, sometimes we can do this way, go into a little bit of a,
I would love that. I would really
yeah,
love that to actually get some
because I know
guidance
it'll
on that.
stop. I know that part.
Because
I can tell you
I
that. I
know a
know a
lot of
lot about the future.
I know a lot of other people who are on this call are interested in this issue. Not interested, consumed by this issue
Yeah.
of where we're going and how can we influence it and how can we use our knowledge of esoteric subjects in order to help direct the energies.
Well, that is possible. I've been able to do that with my high-end students.
Right.
Really be able to mandate exactly what's going to be the next turn within a war, and we got every single time we got it done.
Well, we need to get the witches and warlocks together.
The problem is that it doesn't last.
Uh-huh.
People who pray for one city and pray, and the city's
The crime rate goes down and
yeah, it goes down, but then it comes back up and they stop doing their hymns and that's a problem.
we had
It has to be something that's really in the stem of our minds. We can't,
to keep the focus going. Daniel, you
yeah.
had something to add.
Well, it was the thought is a bit obsolete because of the turn the conversation has taken, but to address this, it's something we've all been grappling with. For myself, for what it's worth, I refuse to be one more victim of the forces involved. I just try to maintain my balance and my sense of my core identity. And I figure if it gets me down, then I'm just another one of their victims, and I'm not going to be like that. That doesn't mean that I'm blowing it off in some new age body.
What about if you feeling murderous about the whole situation? Does that work?
Well, I think it's okay to let off some imaginary steam in that way, as long as it's sort of kept in the right perspective. I refuse to be tortured by the situation, because then if you become dysfunctional, then you can't act in any way constructively, either to yourself or those closest to you, or the society at large.
I think a lot of Americans are leaving the States because of Trump.
Yeah. I call it the Trusk administration.
Okay, so
my earlier question is just to get us back into a slightly more esoteric track. It has to do with materializations. I once met a man. I spent about at least 5 minutes with him, and had later learned that he had been dead for 2 years at the time that I met him. And that raises many questions for me, including the question of how many people we see walking on the street are just visiting. And it's something. Have you experienced that? Have you or looked into it? The whole idea of physical manifestation of someone who's on the other side, to me, is very intriguing, because it's a seamless it's a seamless thing. This man was solid, physical, calls into question our perception of the physical as well.
Yeah. Well, I get a lot of this sort of stuff. When my husband died, the last husband died, he did so many wild things. He took away things from the house and stuff. I'm talking within a couple of weeks of his death. He was at his own autopsy and told me clearly what was going on. I had a friend who absolutely took a whole light at the ceiling out so gently that the cat underneath it didn't even move. My husband actually hid keys, and we all looked, three of us looking in this drawer over and over again, dumping it, and then suddenly the keys are in there at some point. Now, and I think as a medium, you end up expecting things like that in your life. It's a lot of fun. It's amazing sometimes what comes through.
I call it
But
metaphysical.
they need to be able to do it. And sometimes they if you were in Egypt, for instance, many people would know how to do it. It would be part of not just their social system, but also part of their army. Believe me.
Well, that's
And
a whole other issue about what psychic use of, particularly in Russia. That's got, and other countries. China is very big on psychic stuff, and how it's being used and misused. You know, those of us who are concerned about peace and whatever, it's really whatever. Eric, can we bring you in on this? Because I know you're very big on interdimensionals.
Yeah, to give a very small initiative response on what can we do. The two first steps. Step one is stop considering yourself as an individual, because that is so far from reality. You are a system. As Julia explained, you are multidimensional, you have splits, you have parallel lives, you have reincarnations, you have a soul, an oversoul, on planet, off planet, millions and millions of options into one system.
yeah, that's great. I love hearing that from you.
And the second thing is connect with your higher self. I'll explain. The higher self is the one, the CEO, the one above you.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah,
plus
it's always a
one.
good idea. Mhm.
And
Well,
that
in order to
one,
do that, a lot of times you have to open up this first.
yeah,
And that
that's
gets
the first
code.
thing
Yeah.
you have to
The
do.
brain is really here.
Yeah. So the
And
thing is,
yeah,
we call it the soul or the guide or the higher self. I don't care. Up to God, if you will. I don't care. But you have to get the coordinator online. And that is the first step. The coordinator is not the individual. And that happens dreaming, visualizing, but in theory, channeling, meaning the channel means just I have a telephone upstairs to a higher level. I go to the boss and I ask the boss, what do you have in mind here? What is the timeline? What is the space line? What is the intention? Because he has the script, he is the director, but you as an individual, you are the actor and you can do almost nothing. Just run your race. But when you are in connection, when you are merging with your CEO, that's where we are going. And we are into that system as we speak.
What are your thoughts on that, Julia?
there's so much more that can be done in this whole area. I mean, tons and tons and tons. We can raise our children differently, and they will have different emotional levels and different visions. And there you can see a lot of children already in the last 20 years have really high levels of intellect. It's going on now. And I think the population is drawing back, which we should expect because there won't be that many people here in another 300-400 years. Not from any problem, it's just not wanted.
People,
There won't be
well,
anything
all
like
over the world, the birth rates are
intellect.
falling.
Yeah.
That's right. People
So
don't
many
want
things
to.
are changing.
Yeah, lots of things happening. It's interesting. Regina, can we bring you in on this conversation? Because I know you must have a million thoughts on this, but
Well, my thoughts are exactly as Eric's, actually.
yeah.
that we absolutely, as a human being, we are enough, and we are enough because if we have access to, as he calls it, our coordinator. And because we're so much bigger than this person itself, this physical body,
Yeah.
we are all of those other
It's
entities.
not even allowed. I mean, people are in slavery for 5 days a week.
Mm.
It's a slavery. If
What is
you
slavery?
don't do this and work for me, you don't get this ticket to stay alive the next month. It's just the whole system doesn't work.
Yeah.
We've moved too far
The
away from
system that
nature.
we have chosen to live in, yes, because we have chosen to live in this place in order to evolve. That's how I believe.
Mhm.
That's my belief. That it's not everybody else's belief, but it's how I feel that as a spiritual being, I've
These would be
chosen.
in my view, that would be the people who cared. And there's all kinds of different levels about that.
Yeah, well, there's
Yeah.
all different sorts of splits too, if you want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
put
Oh
it
my
that way.
God, yeah.
It's
Endless.
it's parallel lives. I mean, or splits, whichever you would prefer to use. But I agree with Eric completely, and I think we are. I think that we, not I think, I believe we have tremendous ability to make a difference, and especially if we come together, even in a community such as this, and just open ourselves up under a wonderful meditation, even to make a difference. If
It
we
can
look
be
at
done.
ourselves as an
Definitely.
individual,
Mhm.
Julia,
Mhm.
if we just listen, then we're not really seeing the big picture. If we could look at the big picture from the universe, from way far beyond, outside, and look back, I think we could see what a difference we make.
Yeah. If you don't mind me interjecting something, I have had an incarnation of not a Homo sapien, but Neanderthal. And to be in his body and to see how he sees and how he experiences the earth and life was magnificent.
Why can't you continue to capture that?
Well, first of all, it would mean that I'd be pretty much alone. Second of all, it doesn't involve language.
Well, thought.
I can't go to the supermarket. But I'm so thankful to have ever had the feelings and to know that there's so many different ways of being that are so exotic, but so brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I,
I agree with you.
are we talking about the similar sort of thing of living in an indigenous culture, like where you're mixing with people who are very close to the earth? Would that sort of capture that? I think many of us are drawn to indigenous cultures because of that
Yeah,
desire to be part of something bigger, a different way of looking at the world.
yeah, as a gift.
Yeah, I know Regina has done a lot of work with indigenous cultures and Indians. You live in Indian territory, don't you, Regina? It's very much Native Americans area.
Where,
I live in Nebraska, near all the
oh, I get it.
reservations and stuff, but my home is on burial grounds. So I visit a lot. I have a lot of visitors.
Mm,
But
I
I'm
have
not
some
saying,
Indian blood.
I think from Dan's perspective,
Mhm.
many of the things in the terminology we're all using, the words are the limitation, are the limiting our understanding of these different words that we're using. Some of them are very similar, or you use the word split. I have other understanding for splits too, and as well as multiple lives or parallel lives, no life, no time frame, no space. All of these things, our words are so limiting to what is actual.
Yeah, what's underneath, yeah. What's
Mhm.
propelling that, yeah.
And Wendy, we have such great power within ourselves. And as a collective, we have an even greater ability to make a difference. Will we change what's going on right now? That's a good question. How might
I think it's inevitable. Of course we will. There's, a lot of my upper students used to come to me in my house, and we would do things about the future and things of that sort, trying to maneuver it a bit, but it's too big a job. And things like Instagram, computers, all that, it's all going to collapse at some point. And there's decentralization everywhere.
Okay.
I've gotten
I think
that
the only
from a
thing
lot of different places. Hmm?
it's the only way to stay sane is to go above, to rise up out of this, to
Well, yeah,
actually to
because
see the bigger
also,
picture.
absolutely, because you get more real information than what comes out of your own mouth and your own ideas, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ellen has raised her hand. Ellen, would you like to contribute?
Yeah, I would like to speak to this. I'm with the Eric and Regina ideas that are coming out of this discussion, but as I've shared before, I've been a part of an indigenous culture for many years, and the elders have spoken of this time. And um, you know, we speak of it in the tradition I came from as the sixth sun, the sexto soul, that we're going through a regeneration, a recreation of civilization is actually underway. And I watched a fascinating presentation with a man who's done a great deal of research into the yuga cycles, along with an astrologer. And it's as if what this realm that we're engaged in, that we're all concerned about, everything that's kind of falling apart, this realm is a constructed realm for the sake of our working through the very soul qualities that we are trying to develop in however many ways we express that.
Mhm.
In my world, I believe that we are each here. We chose to be here at this time to do this thing that each one of us knows is part of our system's job on this huge regenerative, rebirthing combination of destruction and creation cycle that we're just, I believe, are just entering and probably aren't going to see the benefits of for a good 200 years. And this is kind of consistent
Yeah,
with
it's about that.
the elders taught,
Yeah.
and part of it is to live, from my perspective, is to tap in and live as deeply as I can into that divine soul template that is, that is the creation energy, to live in my daily life as consistently with the integrity of the world I want to see in that 200, 300 years.
Mhm.
Not,
Oh, look at it.
yeah.
Don't wait.
Oh,
Seriously.
that I already
Yeah.
am. I'm living the way that I'm choosing daily
Mhm.
those things. But that's my view of it, and I think each of us knows in that deeper part what we're here to do.
Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan wanted to come in on something just before and then we'll sort of
Okay.
wrap it up. Dan?
Just quickly, yeah, in terms of the times we're living in right now, and Regina or Julia mentioned something to the effect of how we're living now is not really sustainable. The fact that I think it's wonderful that we, scattered all over the planet, can be here in one space and talking with each other, thanks to this wonderful technology we have.
We should do this sort of thing more often.
I agree. And I also don't think we should take it for granted, because regardless of what the billionaires believe about how things are going to go, this whole structure is built on it's a very ultimately fragile infrastructure. for any number of reasons. We've been very lucky so far that things have held up the way they've held up. How much longer this can go on, given all the known circumstances, let alone the unknowns, it's a crapshoot. So I think we need to make the best use of and appreciate.
I mean, the obvious, they don't even handle the obvious. If you have masses of population, how much heat comes from New York just to have billions of people, or millions rather, millions of people all breathing with their heaters and their electrical devices. And nobody talks about that. They only worry about, oh no, what happens if the populations slow down, get smaller and whatever? What do we do with the older people, and how do we create more income? I mean, the reasons for why we don't help ourselves or even defend ourselves are ridiculous.
And the thing is, we already, even in the so-called straight world, we have models for how to do things better. I mean, compared with how things are handled in the United States, look at the Nordic countries, the Scandinavians, or Northern Europe in general. They've routinely solved problems that years ago that we're just beginning to recognize here in the U.S. and becoming aware of as social issues. Well, not just, they've been for a long time issues that we've struggled with. And
but a lot of that's failing. A lot of Europe is failing all over the place, making mistakes and going into extreme debts. France has nothing. Germany has nothing. France is worse than Greece.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I know Europe certainly had challenges with the sort of handoff of security from the United States, but you think Europe can self-correct to a degree that, say, the United States can't, perhaps? I don't know. I haven't been to Europe.
Well, I see it from different views because, living here, you see a lot of filth in the governments. And it's really, very hard sometimes to allow it, but it's allowed. The judicial system is it's like a mafia. It's like, put money under the table so you win it's awful. I'm no longer have any ideas about France or any of these EU countries that they're so spectacular, because they're changing too, and all of them are going right. All of them. And that's mine, get away from me. And there's more and more Nazi people in Germany again. So it'll turn around. I have no, and
so this is the question: how do we live with this reality without spiritually bypassing? I mean, it's very easy to say, love and light, and everything will be fine when we die. We'll all go to heaven, and that we won't have those problems. Except
Hardly.
that we don't. Except that it doesn't work that way.
No,
We
it
take
doesn't.
it with us. We take it with us. And this is the question of how can we in our own little orbit set up structures that help people through this and contribute in our own little way.
I think it can only happen with creating unities. I think that's one of the big things that have flopped. There is no real togetherness in any group anymore. It's all from themselves, drug people too, alone in their own systems. There are no ideals anymore. There is no image anymore that can help lead us. And we have to build them again. It's people like you creating something where people are free and can join into what you're talking about and their experiences and things of that sort. We can have another language just from here, not from here. And a language that encompasses greater fields than what we're used to, freedoms that we don't know. We can do that.
I think being together with like-minded people is really, really important. Creating small circles. I would suggest that we just focus on creating small home circles. This is one of the things.
That's exactly the sort of thing I'm speaking of. Exactly.
This is
Until
what
we can allow it to get bigger. But there's always going to be somebody who wants the power.
It's very interesting because in this group, we're connected very much to physical mediumship. And the thing that's coming through from the spirit world to the physical mediums is no more public demonstrations. Form your home circles. Form home circles to support each other and to become batteries of the spirit. So that's my only suggestion, is for people to get together once a week, once a fortnight, bring people together. There's so much isolation, so much loneliness.
Very true. That's another thing, the isolation.
And I think that,
America is trying to find ways out of this because the depression levels and the suicide levels and the loneliness levels are way too high. And they're trying to contribute to that. Yeah.
If you possibly can, just create a little meditation group. Even if you meet, once a week, it stays with people. This is why we're creating all these little groups online, simply because people do feel connected, and that connection stays with you during the week. And it's not ideally, it's great if you can do it in person. I know quite a lot of people here have got little groups of one kind or another that work for them, but they are sustaining, and that's what we seem to need at the moment. There's this whole shift in IT towards individuality, the whole Instagram thing, the whole thing of look how great I am, look at my perfect life, and yet the reality, and my perfect body, exactly, and yet the whole thing that I see is so many people just floundering and isolated.
It's horrible. The suicide stuff is horrible. And, I've worked with a lot of people whose children have committed suicide, and they don't even know why they're doing it. But I think it has to do with the expectations of manhood, and nobody can really fit manhood in a little jar. You've got to really work at manhood, and they don't feel they're ever going to get there, and they just kill themselves. There's no reason to go on. The jumping in front of trains.
So, well, this is what we've got to do. It's kind of like shine your little light wherever you can, and just sort of I think we realize that everybody is pretty much behind the so-called picture of the perfect life, the perfect body. Nobody is an island. We really do have to reach out to each other.
Yeah,
that's about the only thing.
Every time I see an old lady, like I'm not, but an older lady than I am, and I think, what kind of a life does she have or he have? Just so many fears.
And yet at the same time, I think we really have to keep that positive vision in our life. Before we started today, Giles, as one of our scientists, came on, and he was saying there is so much happening in the world of science, so much great stuff. And he was talking about reclaiming the deserts. India and China has reclaimed 1/3 of its deserts. Amazing stuff is happening. Amazing. We have to focus on the good stuff that's happening, and we have to keep the vision alive of what, as Ellen was saying, live the way you'd like to live. As Julie was saying, try to take the time to live, but and just maintain your own personal integrity, as Dan said. But again, it's for most of us, it's just one day at a time of just really using your spiritual practice, looking for the positive, and keep the faith alive. Julia, do you have any?
I think there's no question that will continue. I think we have armies of I don't know what you call them, clairvoyant people, or what's this other word that they use now? Intuitives. I mean, really, everybody's intuitive, but there's so many developing all over. I don't know about countries outside of Europe. In France, no. France is classical, and it won't do anything that's not French. But Austria, Germany, they all have these urges to join these groups and to get these skills. So it can be done. It's a little, it saddens me that we don't have tribes anymore.
Yeah.
I think tribes, with their dancing, that relieves all of the tensions and things of that sort. But then on the other hand, you can't, but too many people don't understand how dangerous these people can be, come from, or had to be, and not to idealize them so much. But that to me is sort of my favorite view of the way to live.
Well, I think we have found our own tribe here, but that's what the best we can do at the moment. Ellen, you've got some final thoughts.
I just wanted to jump into that one too, because it's really, for me, I live on a farm where we grow our own food. We have goats and we have chickens and orchard, and it's about learning how to cooperate with each other. And I think we can start that on the smallest scale possible. I have to set aside a lot of things that, that may not please my ego very much. But if I recognize that the practice that I'm doing here is this cooperative practice of working with other human beings to sustain our good health and our our lives together, then I pass up a lot of the things that I might get disturbed about. And I think a huge part of what is the challenge right now is learning how to cooperate with people with whom the ideological conversation may not go really well, but when we're working together towards some common goal, we're learning how to be human and in bringing down into our human bodies that larger system that we want to see manifest in a bigger way.
Great.
That's it.
For you, I mean, we all sound a little bit like hippies second time around.
We are.
It was a great period of life, and I don't know
happy
if
to be an old hippie.
she was there yet, but certainly I was right in the middle of it.
Good stuff.
Did it come to Australia?
And I never gave
oh my gosh, yes. I think I've still got, my husband's still got his peace medal sitting up there somewhere. And the flares, and it was a good time, a very, very good time.
Well, I think it was one of the best.
Yeah, we were very fortunate.
So strong, it became so famous.
Yeah,
that people got rid of it.
Wonderful stuff. Anybody that we haven't heard from tonight that would like to give us some final thoughts? We want to hear from everybody. Hyacinth, do you have any final thoughts, my dear? Hyacinth is in Vienna, another European.
No, nothing to say tonight.
Nothing to say.
Uh-oh.
All right, lots of love. Charity. Charity's on a farm in Australia, in Melbourne, near Melbourne.
Listen, here, I've got tons more information. Should I try to send it to you or just throw it out?
No, send it to me. Absolutely, send it. We'll put it online for people to go further with.
All right.
Send it to me, definitely. Or come back. We'll come back. We'll have a continuation. We'd love to have you as part of an ongoing part of our community.
Yeah, and I would love to be a part too. And
Yeah.
I would also love the discussions. I
We
really
have,
love,
well, we have
because I don't
discussions.
have people who think this way here.
Right. Well, we have got an amazing community of people who are really on the same wavelength and have deep thoughts. Sylvia, we haven't heard, Charity, first of all, we haven't heard from you. Just a final thought, please. We want you to go away uplifted.
Final thoughts.
Quicker.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I think this is absolutely interesting. Talking about all these cycles, I was commenting before, and Steve just sent me a link about history repeating itself, and I think it's like life lessons that come in our own smaller version to challenge us and to learn the lesson. And what goes around comes around. And so history is repeating a little bit just to see if we've got the life lesson right yet. And I don't think we need to buy into all the drama that's happening. But yes, what we do in our own lives and what we put out, you know, we've shifted in ourselves, we've learned, we've grown, we affect other people with our light. And there's a lot of us out there. I think just because of the drama of, say, the new Nazi movement and all that horrible stuff going on is in the media. We're not in the media, but that's what gets the attention. But it's just enough to reincite or ignite what is required to counteract that. I don't know, lift ourselves up. We don't have to buy into it.
Beautiful.
No.
Beautiful. Sylvia, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I agree with what Charity just said. I shine my light, and I appreciate what you do, Wendy. I really do, to bring these like-minded people together. And I really enjoy joining in on Sunday afternoons.
Thank you, Sylvia. JL?
Disappeared?
Can you hear me? And I've really enjoyed it. I like the well, what I'm going to do when we're finished, I'm just going to do what you say, sit quietly, just say, come and talk to me, my higher self. And I'm going to tune in. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Tune into your higher self. Julie,
Yeah,
that's a question to you. How do you tune into your higher self? Just sit and talk to it.
Just sit and wait.
No, I don't think so.
I missed it.
That may work sometimes, but I would not consider that as reliable. You have to get into a certain kind of a state. You know, in most of these states, you don't need to do anything like a tiny little bit going underneath your normal state of consciousness. It can happen. It can be so fast. And then you can go, when you're within that, you can go look around like a searchlight and ask for what you want and then find it.
I'll have a go.
Then it begins.
I'll have a go. Thank you.
So it's all this stuff. It's one thing. The first thing I tell my kids when they come in on the first day, every one of you can do it. And if you think you can't, you would have been dead by now. That's the truth.
That's true.
Yeah, how do our cells communicate? It's not just electric. You know, I mean, everything that goes on is partly the manifestation, to a great extent, of what we think, what we feel. So,
Christina, we haven't heard from you. Just a few words. We try to get everybody involved.
I know.
You're muted. You're muted.
I'm on Windows 11 now. It's different.
It's a bit of a learning curve, yeah. I haven't been going yet.
Oh, God. Just remember that we are actually part of the whole. The whole is divine, that we are loved, we are protected, as long as we believe that we are protected, and just do the loving thing. If ever you have question, what shall I do? Do the loving thing that will help everybody, hopefully. That's all.
Beautifully said. It's all about love. That's all that we know.
And gratitude.
And gratitude, love and gratitude.
Gratitude is the doorway to so much.
Well, Julia, I am very, very grateful for you coming on today, using your valuable time and your preparation. You have given us so much to think about, so much, and I'm just waiting for your website to come back on. Lucas, there's a hint. We're looking forward to it.
I'm very happy to see you and to be with you for a while. I think you're so remarkable.
It's just lovely to be together with like-minded people. And I'd like to get in touch with you, Julia, and we'll just maybe set something up that we can talk more regularly.